Hello, this is Daniel Jarvis. I am the technical lead with VTrans for the Vermont Statewide Parcel project, and I'm going to give an overview of the quality check tool that we will be providing to make sure that your data conform to the standard. On the right here, you see a zip file. This is what we are going to provide. VTPQC, Vermont Parcel Quality Check. When you go into that zip file, what you want to do is unzip or drag and drop that zip file into your root directory. You can see here I have it in my C drive, and then there is the unzipped folder, VTPQC. If you have a D or an E as your root, go ahead and use that, and you'll have the option in the tool to define that root drive. If we go inside of that parent folder, there are a number of items that come packaged with the zip file that you'll want to leave as they are. The tool will use this data to check your data. There is an intake folder inside this directory that you'll place your data. First, I'll overview these files. It comes with a Python file. This is what the tool is going to use to check the data. A toolbox, the tool is contained within that toolbox. You will access that through ArcGIS. A copy of the statewide grand list. It's named according to a specific convention that the tool is going to look for. Grand list year is on here. If you were to go in that zip file, you'd have the exact same name on the CSV file that actually has the grand list. If you were using the 2017 grand list that we would provide, we would give you a zipped copy with the same name, but 2017 on here, with that CSV inside here, which you'll want to leave here. You can extract a copy elsewhere if you'd like to inspect it, but you would want to leave the copy with the name as it is for the tool to find. A copy of the template for the parcel standard. This template is outlined in the parcel standard as posted to VCGI's webpage. This contains all the feature classes and the domains and everything, the entire standard. And these series of templates are built according to that standard. So what you want to do is extract this data model somewhere in your computer, and using ArcGIS, copy the template into the intake directory, which I'll show you in just a moment. You have shapefile templates and geodatabase templates. We would definitely recommend that you use the geodatabase templates because they have domain values which make it easier to conform to the standard. So that will make it much easier for you to avoid mistakes in your data. You also see a rule file in here, and that allows you to create your own topology class and validate your data. The tool will do the same thing, so assuming that you have all of your topology rules set, you won't encounter any errors with the data. There will always be one topology error, and I'll show you what that is. That has to do with the boundary of your town, and that'll make sense shortly when I get to it. There's also a template for the metadata. The XML would probably be the easiest to work with, and I'll show you how we would do it, or at least one method that you can use to edit that metadata file, and you'll want to copy that XML and paste that into your intake directory. Within this data folder is where all the data will be submitted. All of the towns are listed here. They're listed according to a naming convention that gets rid of spaces and points. So you want to keep these folders as they are and then navigate to the town that you are using. In this case, I'm going to use a sample data set with Northfield parcels. Within each town, there will be a year folder. Say it's 2018, you'll have a 2018 folder. Within that year folder will be a submission date folder, and you'll want to keep this format as it is. And whatever date that you submit the data to us when you're done QCing it, you'll want to have that date match. So you would run the tool one more time on that date so that the log file matches that date as well. Within that submission date folder will be the reserved folder names. The intake data is where you'll put your data. So you'll copy the copy of that template geodatabase in here, do that copying and pasting within ArcMap, within our catalog to avoid any problems. You can copy the XML in our catalog as well and paste that here. And then you'll change the default name of the town to the town you're working on and use the same naming convention with the folders. And then the year for these data sets will be the grand list year that you're using. So if you're using the 2017 grand list, you're going to have that be the year here. That could be different than the submission date. If it's 2018 that you're running the data, you'll have 2018 here, 2018 for your submission date. But if you're still using the 2017 grand list, it'll say 2017 here. In this example, I'm using the 2016 grand list, which is why you're seeing 2016 on these data sets. If in the process of appending your data into these templates, you used some sort of extract, transform, load tool, we would appreciate a copy of that to have a record of how you translated your data. If that's not simple, then not a big deal, but it would be helpful to us to see how you did that. To get your data into these templates, the easiest way to do this, or at least the most foolproof way to do this, would be to use some sort of append. You can use the append tool in ArcGIS or something similar. That way you don't alter the schema of this template. And this would make it easier, much easier for you to conform to the standard. In this example, I appended this data from an external data set, and I just used the append tool. The next folder in this submission date folder is this QC automated folder. You want to leave all of these folders and their names as they are. In this QC automated folder, there are two folders, a town data folder. This is a reserved folder for the tool to have a working directory. It's going to copy your intake folder, your intake data into here. It's going to extract the Parcel standard data model. It's going to extract the grand list. It's going to do some other stuff in here to work with your data and test it. This folder is going to be wiped with each run of the tool. So you don't have to even bother with this folder. Just leave it as is, and the tool will work with it. There's a results folder. This is something that you will go into. This will contain the log files after each run. This won't be wiped. There'll be a time and date for every single run that you do. You can delete old logs if you'd like. We just want that last log file when you submit your data along with your intake data and the ETL and metadata file. This QC manual folder within the submission date folder will contain error feature classes. As the tool finds problems in your data, it will use those object IDs to create separate feature classes that you can use to inspect your data and to see what they look like. You'll also have a key to all of that data in the log file, so you can use one or both. It's recommended you use both just to find obvious errors. If there's really simple stuff, and you may not even need the log file, you'll just see that it's a bunch of weird polygons that don't belong in there. And you'll see that in the error feature classes, and you'll delete them and then run the tool again. You'll also see any topology errors in a feature class in here, and I'll show you that with an example. In my embedded Arc catalog window here, I've connected to my root directory, my C drive. This might be D for you or something else. And you can see that unzipped folder here with the toolbox that it came with and the directory. You're not seeing the zip files and the Python file because they just don't show up in our catalog. And that's fine because you don't need to manipulate them. In this QC data folder directory, I'm going to go to my Northfield example. I've created my 2017 folder. Within the 2017 folder, my submission date folder, conforming to this format, year, month, date, using zeros before single digits. So that if this was 8-1, it would be 0801. There's my intake folder, which I copied using our catalog from the extracted parcel data model. So I have that, and then I appended my data into here. I updated the name to my town based on the naming convention of the folders. I put the grand list year here. I did the same with this metadata XML. I don't have anything in the ETL folder. If you go inside this data model template, you'll see there's a feature data set it comes with, which is where your data is going to be for the required feature classes, which are poly parcels and line parcels. The inactive parcels, the easements, those are level 2 data submissions, which you don't need for this project. They aren't required, but we will definitely take them if you just have them and want to include them, and you can append them in the same way. The intersection table, the parcel standard outlines how you can use this to manually check your match rates. The tool will do this for you as well. So you really only need, within this feature data set, the line parcels and the poly parcels. You can create lines if you don't have them from the parcels using Polygon to Line tool. You would still have to check those line fields afterward to make sure that they conform to the standard using all of the domains. You can do field calculations to do that. When you run the tool, you want to make sure that you're not locking up your data using schema locks. If I was inside this feature class like this and I tried to run the tool, I would probably get a schema lock. So before I run the tool each time, I'm going to go to our folder here, which is the submission date. I'm going to right-click on that and hit refresh. That will close things up and release any locks. If I had any data in my map, I would remove that data and make sure I have nothing here, and then I'll refresh. So this is just releasing any locks. In Windows Explorer here, I don't really want to be inside of my data in any way that might lock things up like this. You want to just be back out to your submission date folder here. When I do run the data, run the tool, I have the results pane open here, which you can get to from geoprocessing results. And this will allow me to rerun the tool without having to enter all of the parameters every time. And I'll show you how you would do that. So the first time, I'm going to go into the toolbox and just open it up. You don't want to right-click and add toolbox or do anything like that, or add it to our toolbox menu. Just navigate to that directory and open it up, and that's the tool right there. That's the easiest way, best way to run it to avoid any mistakes. So I'll double-click the tool. Within the tool, I've got town name, and this is validated, so you can't make any mistakes with these names. So I'm just going to start typing in Northfield, and I can hit my down arrow, and there's Northfield. Submission date does have to match that folder structure. So I know I have 2017 08010. I'm going to type that in. You could copy and paste it as well. 2017 08010. I'm just going to put my name, my affiliation. This is validated as well, so everybody is in here. If you see a problem with this, let us know. I'm running as VTrans. Just check topology boxes here because topology modifications are especially troublesome with schema locks, even if you have everything closed out like you should. If you have an older version of ArcMap, you'll have these problems. If you have a newer version like 10.4 or 10.5, you shouldn't have these problems. Newer versions do a better job of releasing locks. So if you're noticing that you're having locks, having errors as you try to run the tool, you're seeing red text and it says schema lock, like this, and then just after you fix all of your attribute problems, your metadata problems, all the errors that pop up in the log file, for your last run, then run the topology, and then you won't have to worry about that. If you do get a schema lock error for whatever reason, just close out of ArcMap, make sure you're out of all of those folders, make sure you got nothing funky going on. with Windows, reopen ArcMap and rerun the tool, and you should be fine. If you still have a schema lock, some people just have issues with their installation, restart your computer and rerun it. But if the installation is fine, you should be able to just run this. If you have a newer version of ArcMap, you should be able to run it with the topology. You can try it with an older version. Sometimes things work great. But if everything is up to date, this should work great as it is. Directory root, mine is C drive. If yours is some other letter, choose that, and the tool will recognize where your data are stored. Assuming that you've got things extracted into your root directory, C, VTPQC, and you left all those default folders, things should run fine. So I'm going to run this and show you an example of going through an output. If you have a lot of problems, it can take a couple minutes. If you have hardly any problems, it shouldn't take longer than a minute. You notice here there's unchecked on my close this dialog when completed successfully checkbox. You want to leave that unchecked so this can stay open for a moment when you're done, and you'll have these instructions to tell you where your log file is. Your log file will always be in the same location. It'll always be in that results folder in the town, the year, the submission date, where everything is. QC automated results. Your log files will always be here, but in case you forget, this dialog will tell you where that is. So as we go, we're still running, but we're seeing that there's some problems with the data already. It's going to keep running as long as it can. Some errors will prevent the tool from completely running, and it'll tell you that the process was aborted and fix those errors, and you'll be able to rerun the tool to get all of these checks. For instance, if you have file name problems, if you don't put the correct year in for the grand list, things like that, you won't be able to run all these things until you fix that, and it'll tell you that. I was able to run all the way through to checking the attributes. I'm seeing I have metadata problems, I have topology problems, and I have attribute problems. And so it's telling me, see the log file for details. I'm getting the same log file location for each one here. In case you only had one of these errors, it's telling you where to go. If you didn't get that location hint, it's always going to be in the results folder here. And there's that log file that popped out. So this gives me a quick overview, but for the details, I'm going to go to the log file. So I can close this. I'll always leave that unchecked, so this will just pop up and I'll see what's going on. It won't suddenly close when it's done. You can always go back to that results pane and see that output and all of those messages. But everything is in the log file, so I'm going to go to the log file. There's my log file. I'll open it up. I'll get those same processing status updates. Everything it did, you have this header information that you filled out in the tool. Some basic info about where it extracted the data, what your format was, data that's being processed. If you conform, you'll see no errors, so the schema was fine. There are metadata problems, and I didn't update the metadata for this default file, and that's why we're getting all of these. Each of these detail sections for metadata, the way these work, you have core elements to refer, so that you can refer back to the parcel standard, the metadata core elements that we want. Where are they? In this parcel standard. Let's see here. There they are. Here's a list of all the required metadata. It's outlined here. And you can see in this first case, the core element is entity and attribute information. Entity and attribute information. And to get to the actual entity, here's the path within the metadata file, within the XML. And this is telling you didn't change this default value. And so what I use, there are different ways to edit metadata. I use TKME, which you can find if you just Google USGS TKME. I use it because it's very simple. I'm going to open that metadata file, and you can see all of those core elements with their lineage. So I can go to this first one. I'm going to pane these two together. It's saying in entity and attribute information. I'm going to find that parent. There it is. And then following this path, EA info, detailed, entity type label. It's saying I didn't update this. So I'll update this to Northfield, to my grand list year, 2016, and this particular one here, it says the line parcels on the right here, is the one I just updated. So if I save that, once you've edited all this stuff, you can do the same thing. Save that file, close it, that way you don't lock it up when you run the tool the next time. So assume I've fixed all this metadata information, I go to the next section. The spatial reference is fine. It says there are topology errors present. I'll go into the QC manual folder. That's where all of the error feature classes are being placed. So the town, the year, the submission date, QC manual, and there's the parcel errors database that gets created. In there's a topology errors feature data set, and there are the topology errors as a feature class. Bring that in, and you can see the features and the attributes. I actually don't have any topology errors for this data set, but I'm still going to get one topology error, which is the border of the entire town. That's just because there are no polygons on the outside of it, and we're requiring no gaps. So you're always going to get that one error after you've fixed all of your topology problems, if you have any. Back to the log file. I know they're fixed, even though I'm getting that one error. It's just that one error, and that's fine. Field value information. This is what kicked off the abort on the tool, because having these attributes correct is a showstopper. It will give you each feature class and then all of the problems associated with that. So the polyparcels feature class for object ID 8, source type field, contains a null or empty string. So that was left empty when there's a domain, so there should be values there. It should be one of these domain values. For each of these printouts, it'll tell you what's going on, where it is. You can also go into these error feature classes that get produced. For every single error using the object ID, for the polyparcels, we can see, we open it up. This was object ID 8, and we can validate that by going back to the intake data, grabbing that polyparcels data set as well, opening that feature class, attribute table. I'm going to pane these two next to each other, and you can see feature class row 8, object ID 8, doesn't have this information. So if we looked on the map itself, I just highlighted that one record. There it is right there. If I uncheck this, there is the error feature class record. There it is right there. So we're just missing that information. So the feature class just gives you a quick look at where those errors are, and you can see these both look like roads. So that's one way that this can help you identify what's going on. And then when you want to actually fix these errors, you don't fix them on the error feature class. You go back to your intake data and you fix your data. And you can see here on the bottom, this is the intake data. This is the data you've submitted, and there are the problems. There's data missing on these fields. And to see how the domain works, you can do this with field calculator, or you can go into edit. This is the easiest way to see what's required. If I go to one of these domain fields, you can see the required values. I can't put anything else in there. For the date fields, you need to put a date that has the right length, so 6 characters. You couldn't put it a little shorter like this, you'd get an error. So you want that to conform to that, and you'll get a warning if it was too short. So we'd fill in all that data. Remove these. If you were editing, you want to close any editing sessions that you had open. Remove that data from your map so you don't lock things up. Refresh your map. Assuming you've fixed all of the errors in here and you want to rerun the tool, go to your parent folder, hit refresh to release any locks. I'll make sure that I'm not inside that directory, and then I should be able to run this tool again with no problems. Rather than reopening the tool and re-entering the parameters, I know I'm keeping them the same, so I'm just going to go to this results pane. There it is. I could look at what happened again here, the quick warnings, or I could just right-click and rerun the tool. Assuming you fixed all of your errors, it will run a bit faster. I only fixed some of the metadata, so there's still errors there. That topology error is still going to pop up. We know what it is. There's that topology error. I would avoid going into the log file before the tool finishes. It's done. I'm seeing the same errors. I didn't really fix much, which is why we're seeing the same errors. If I go into that log file now, results. Oh, this is a different test directory I had open. Here's the actual one. There's the log file. I have these sorted by date modified. That way I know what the most recent one was. Getting the same errors, but now that last metadata entity is not being displayed anymore because I fixed it. I entered the data. I have one less attribute field here. Actually picked one of the domain values and I added the date. So assuming you fix all of your problems from the first log file, then your next log file shouldn't have any issues. Some errors have inheritance. So you fix one error, but you don't see others until you fix that, and then others will pop up, and you'll see that as you work through your data. When you're done, you're going to be submitting the most recent log file along with your intake data. We don't want these auto-generated data. This gets wiped every time anyway. We just want that most recent log file and all of your intake data. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me, CC Brian Coolidge at AppGeo, and I'm glad to answer any questions about running the tool or just interpreting the output and how it works. If you notice any problems that don't seem to make sense, let me know. Maybe there's a problem with the tool. We can fix that. Aside from that, that's the basic overview. There's also a technical document that explains this same process. Thanks and good luck.